Okay, greetings one and all. Now, if you're watching this, just watching it on YouTube, I think I'm going to leave this video up. If it doesn't work out, then I will go ahead and hide the video later. But this should be the video where I show you guys how to attach these to this. So this is live streamed, but since I'm keeping it up, I'm going to kind of keep a bit of a more professional bit here at the very beginning, and then later on it'll just be a live stream. So when this portion ends and you're done assembling your Sledgefire, you can go ahead and stop watching or whatever you need to do. But I'm just going to show you the gist of what you need to get started with this. Please ignore the mess. So first of all, you are going to receive your handle scales something like this. You'll see a few flaws. There was two flaws, one right here, three flaws, one right here, and one right here. These two are a little more complicated to get out. There were bubbles on the inside of these holes right here. That's already going to be removed by the time you get them, because since they're a little more complicated, I went ahead and removed them myself. It's a little more cleanup on my end, but I don't mind. You're also going to get a bit of a bubble right here. That kind of sucks. Not exactly sure why that happened in the mold, because it shouldn't have, but it happened. So you will either have to sand that down, or, like I'm going to do, use a sharp X-Acto knife to very carefully remove that. There's a bit of flashing on the edges here, and they might not line up perfectly. That's just the gist of it, unfortunately. That's just how it's going to work. So you don't actually have to open your Sledgefire to do any of these mods to it. You can, I have a barrel in here already. You can actually undo all of these screws, not undo this one. Pop this open. There's a little bit of a ejector that ejects the shells on the very top here, and you can actually pry that out, including the spring, without opening this. So that will let you accept any sort of barrels or whatever. This is the Caliburn barrel material inside of a 16mm Sledgefire singled adapter. This one is modeled off of modeled from Ryan from Make Test Battle, but there's plenty out there if you so choose. Don't dry fire it like that. Completely forgot. So what you're going to want to do is cut off the handles just underneath these screw ports. Underneath the screw ports. So these two screw ports are staying with the rest of the blaster. Again, you don't have to open your blaster to do this, but I would recommend you doing it. It's just a little bit easier. If you choose not to, then I recommend you start cutting somewhere about right here, and then working your way up to what's eventually going to be, we'll trade out Sledgefires here, just for ease with me, what's eventually going to be this flat spot right here. Now, as you can see, if I open this up, I am now realizing that I might have screwed this together, and I absolutely did. So give me 1 second to get a screwdriver. That's professional. Super professional here. To all the people in the chat, just give me 1 second to get through this. I do believe that was the only... Nope. There. So, take that apart, and you'll see the flat on this side right here, just underneath the screw ports. You're just going to want to cut it off right there. What I usually do is take a Sharpie and mark where it is on either side, flip it over, and then connect those two dots. And then you can either run it through your bandsaw like I do, or you can use a Dremel, or you can use a hacksaw, or you can, you know, hacksaw is pretty much going to be your cheapest option because that's like $10 at Walmart. So it's not that big of a deal. But once you get your handles cut off there, that's pretty much the only thing you need to do. I would recommend sanding this area to get a little bit of a better contact surface when you're applying the glue and stuff, but it's not a 100% requirement. What is a requirement is that you make sure that there's no sort of dust or, God forbid, grease if you've modified this already. you might be unaware that there's grease on your hands, and then you might be touching your handle. So make sure that you get this cleaned up. Isopropyl alcohol is usually what I would recommend. If you don't have that, just make sure it's scrubbed down as best as you can do it. So usually I would go ahead and clean stuff up like this, and you can just take a razor and shave this down. You don't have to use a razor. You can sand it down if you really want to, but what I would recommend is shaving it down like this and then sanding it down if you really wanted to. If you're going to keep these handle scales this color, you're not going to paint over them or something, then you might want to just use this. And what you can do after you start getting this a little more flush is use it like a scraper and just kind of scrape it like that. Now if you have a darker color like black, you might notice that it's a little bit of a lighter color now, and that might bother you. If you want to get rid of that, you can actually see it a little bit here. If you want to get rid of that, you can actually take silicone grease and put it on there and then wipe it off as best as you can, and it will get rid of the discoloration. So this inside edge you don't really want to clean up by itself. You actually want to attach them first. The pour spouts are down here. That can just get taken off with a Dremel or pretty much anything. If you really don't have a Dremel or something, you can put a piece of sandpaper, excuse me, I forgot the word, on a table and kind of work it away that way. Might be a little bit of a seam here. That's completely normal. But basically, you're going to want to take some glue. I recommend epoxy, specifically methyl methacrylate glue, adhesive, epoxy, excuse me. It'll usually say like plastic weld or plastic bond, but just because it says that doesn't mean it has methyl methacrylate in it. What you're going to want to do is look for the plastic version of something, of whatever epoxy that you use, the little double tubes of it, and then you're going to want to flip it over. On the warnings in the back, somewhere it will say methyl methacrylate. That's the thing that you're looking for. For instance, Loctite, plastic weld or plastic bond or whatever it is, that stuff's good. DevCon plastic weld, that's good. However, JB Weld for plastic is not actually a methyl methacrylate adhesive, and you don't actually want to use that. Just an example. Those are the ones I recommend, but I know people who have used Gorilla Glue on the other handle scales for the hammer shot. Don't really recommend that, but I know people who have. So I guess whatever is easier for you, but that's going to be your best option. So basically, you're just going to want to slap them on there. Put glue on what I would recommend to be both sides, but you don't want to put so much that it's squeezing out everywhere. So just a thin layer on both sides will do the trick. Or, you know, thicker on one side. It's really up to you at this point, but you kind of want to minimize squeeze out. So just be careful. You can put it together like this, and then once it starts to cure, if you're super paranoid, once it's set up, probably after about 15 minutes or something, then you can actually take it apart again and try to use a razor to try to separate that again. Now, usually you shouldn't have that problem if you do it correctly, but if you don't, if you're super paranoid, I don't recommend doing this, but you can actually remove them separately. The reason why I don't recommend doing this is because it might not line up correctly. It seems stupid proof when you're just fitting it on here like this, but you got to remember that this is a perfect fit right now. When you put the glue in between there, you're putting a layer of something in there. It might not sit as perfectly as you think it will, especially if you're inexperienced in doing this. So I would recommend putting them together, but it's going to be up to you in the long run. Also, there are screw ports, something I forgot to mention with the cleanup. There are screw ports here and here. Basically, what you're going to want to do is take a small 1.5 to 2 millimeter drill bit. I think 1/16 works just as well. And just drill down. Obviously, don't go all the way through it, but there is a huge gap there for leeway. You only need like this, like that much in, but the whole thing is like that thick. So you have quite a bit to play with there, but you'll just have to drill those out, and then you can use the regular screws that were from the other end of the Sledgefire handle down here. And then that will just go on like that. And once you have this together and everything set up, then you can go back, and I recommend either a razor or a hand file. If you're doing it like this, make sure you don't slip over this ridge right here and then cut in right here. So it's easy to go up and then boop, and then you slip and then you cut up here. So just take your time, be careful. I really do recommend a file over a razor for this particular portion, but if you don't have a set of files or whatever, you can use hand sanding. You can use a Dremel, which I don't really recommend because you're not looking to take off a bunch of material. There's just a little bit of an inconsistency issue. There's not a whole lot I can do about that, but this side actually came out relatively clean. I would still do a little bit of cleanup back here, and especially down here and stuff, but it's mainly this underneath here that you're going to need to clean up. But other than that, you'll have a Sledgefire with a nice new handle. I'm thinking about maybe painting these different sections like gray or something, just to kind of like break up that orange, because that is quite a bit of orange. But I have someone in mind for this Sledgefire, so that's about that. So if you got the Sledgefire handles and you were guided to this video for assistance, that was pretty much it. We've been going now for about 11.5 minutes. So it's a little bit longer than I wanted to, but I wanted to explain in depth exactly everything. Also, if you plan on painting these, there is a mold release on this. Even if it feels dry, there's a mold release on this, so you're going to want to wash it with soap and water, and that will get it off. But other than that, I think that is pretty much it for that. So I think we will keep live streaming here, but if you came just to see how this is working, thank you for stopping by, and I hope to see you in another video.